Kenwood Chef has stopped working. From everything that's come out of it, I suspect it's the carbon brushes that are broken up. Lots of pieces of black, look like graphite, the sort of thing you get from a pencil, have come out of the base of it. So I suspect that the brushes are broken up and that's what's caused it to stop working. I've bought a repair kit which includes new brushes, and you just need to open up the casing to be able to get to replace the brushes. So I'm just going to show you that now. First stage is to turn the machine on its side and open it so that the hinge is fully open, and you have two screws here that you'll need to remove to be able to split the machine and get access to the motor, and those are Torx screws, so you will need a special Torx bit to get to those, but it's a standard tool that you use on lots of cars if you're doing work on your car. The screws are a Torx T20, and just need to use a screwdriver with the Torx bit on to be able to undo them, and there's two, one either side of the hinge. You can see with the motor cover coming off, you can see you've now got access to be able to get to everything in there. Once you've undone the screws, you then need to move the mechanism so that the catch retracts, and that will then give you access to be able to remove the motor cover. In order to remove the motor cover, you will also need to undo the two screws that are holding the lead in that goes to the plug. So at this point, obviously, you need to make sure that it's completely disconnected from the mains, and only do this if you are fully happy that you understand the essentials of electrics and where you're connecting the wires to. Having undone the connectors, that's now come out, and you can feed through the terminal block and now remove that, and it means we've got access to the base of the motor, and we can now do the next stage. In order to get the motor out, you need to remove the top plate. So there are three Phillips screws that hold this on, and then we need to remove this. On some of the older models, this is actually held on by some additional screws, and you can actually get the plate out by removing those screws. This is a KM300, and it's not actually held on by anything else once you get to this point. You may find that it doesn't actually seem like there's any way to get it off. You have this where the attachments fit in, and the plastic housing fits over the front of it. What I found you needed to do was gently prise the plastic so it lifted off and came out over there. In order to do that, I used this tool for applying filler to walls, and that then gave enough movement on this to lift it, which then allowed the whole plastic to be lifted off. That then gives sufficient access here to these three Phillips headed screws that will allow the motor to then be removed once these are taken out. The good thing with getting this apart, you can see how filthy it is. This machine is nearly 25 years old, and by taking this off, it will also give me a really good opportunity to get it completely cleaned inside. So that will be a really good opportunity to get that sorted. As you're removing these, what you need to do is to make sure that you've got support for the motor underneath, because once you undo the last one, the motor itself will drop through. So I'm just going to gradually do them and then leave one in place while I hold the motor from underneath. And you can see now, as I'm undoing that last one, it's starting to drop through. That's all three screws now out. And the motor will actually come through now. So on the side of the motor, this is where the bushes are, so we need to remove these from underneath. I'm going to focus in on that in a moment. As I've taken it apart, there's some other pieces that have come through. When you look at it, these look like they could be part of the brushes. That could be part of the spring that's just got a bit crushed up. There are brush holders on both sides, one on this side of the motor and one on the other side. I can't yet tell if it's one or both that have broken, so I'm just going to choose one and then start on that. So first thing you need to do is you have a little cover which has some clips on it. You just need to gently prise that off so you can get to the two Phillips screws, and by undoing these it will allow us to get to the carbon brushes. Just holding those, and from what's come out, that was all that was there. So that brush is absolutely toast. So having removed the old one, there's nothing left of it. You have just the brass cap and none of this is there anymore. So what we need to do is put the new one in, that pushes in, and then the brass cap just clips underneath here to hold it in place. Once that's in place, case of just doing up the screws, and we can move on to the other side. When you're tightening it up, you just need to make sure that this terminal goes into the notch that's there, otherwise you'll have difficulty tightening it because you'll be pushing against a piece of plastic that shouldn't be there. If you look, that should be then flush against the side of the motor, which it is now. And that's this side done. Last step is just to replace this cap, which again, it just slides underneath with these catches and they just clip on. Now looking at the other side, just see what this one looks like. Now this one is still intact in terms of the spring, but the carbon that's all that remains of it, so that one needs replacing as well. So screws are now done up, put the brush in on this side, and last stage again is just to clip in the covering plate. So refitting is the reverse of taking it apart. So the first thing to do, if you want to clean it up, that's what I'm just going to do before I put everything in, but this then fits inside. One thing to look out for when you put the motor back in is you have this plastic ring, and just to make sure that goes around the right way. Reason being, you have these rubber grommets that sit from the top, and if it's round the wrong way they won't sit far enough in there because the holes on one side are much narrower than on the other, or much thinner. So it's actually goes up that way, so it looks like it's almost upside down, but that's how it sits there, and then once that goes in it will hold it more in place. If it's round the wrong way, you'll find that the motor is actually slightly loose and you can wobble it, which is obviously not correct. And just line things up. So we've got the motor in place, we've got one screw in, and you just need to line up the others. Once you've got the motor fitted in place, you can just put the drive belt back on, just making sure that that's aligned with the holes, and it should then line up with the teeth here as well, and just make sure that the belt fits over the teeth. Okay, so I've just reattached the hinge. I've reattached the casing for the wires, so that's all protected, and just going to check whether it's now running, having put it all back together. So plugged it in, and let's just turn it on. And the motor's working, which is really good news. So next job I'm just going to do is to get this cleaned up. Obviously disconnect it from the mains before I do that, and then we'll be able to put the top plate back on, and then the job is basically done.